And welcome to another episode of the Rorschach Test Podcast. I am your host, Tyrell James. Today I have a very special guest, Tom Brannan. What's going on, man?
How are you, man? I'm blessed to be here. Thank you.
I am doing well, man. Doing very, very well. So, we're going to do things a little differently, not too different than what I normally do. Normally, what I do here is I ask my guests, I show my guests the Rorschach test or the inkblot test, and I ask them what they see, and then I link it to what it is that they do for a living or to their passions. Um, for those of you all who may not be familiar with me and Tom's relationship, in addition to being friends, we also are starting a business where we will be teaching Krav Maga. And for those of you who don't know what Krav Maga is, I'm actually going to let Tom explain that to you. But um, today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk. I'm still going to put pictures up. Tom is also a police officer, so I'm going to link what he saw on the inkblot test to what it is that he does for a living. But for the most part, this podcast is going to be about the psychology of Krav Maga. So, but for those of you all who don't know what Krav Maga is, I'm going to let Tom just let you know exactly what it is.
So, well, first off, again, thank you for having me. I think this is something that we should definitely put out there because a lot of people don't understand what Krav Maga is.
Right.
So Krav Maga is not a martial art. There's some, I guess, misperceptions as to what it is. It's not a martial art because there's no art, no beauty to it. Okay, it's not for competition. Um, it's not. It's not something that it's not like your traditional martial arts like karate or taekwondo. Krav Maga is an Israeli self-defense combat system, um, which was started back in the mid 1940s by the founder Emi Lichtenfeld. So he was he was in charge of the Krav Maga and athletic division in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and he basically trained all of the Israeli military, and they actually still train from his manual that he created back in the mid 1940s.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh,
So
I thought you were about to say more. I
that's fine.
was- so yeah, okay. Short answer, yes. It's you know what? So let me tell you something. I have looked at with me my boxing background, um, and I did karate when I was like 6 years old. Um, and then I started looking into other things, but nothing other than boxing was very appealing to me, especially since my father was a boxer, and that's how I decided to get into it. But um, out of all of the other forms of combat, Krav Maga was the only thing that really enticed me, which is why I decided I wanted to be a part of it and get into it. But from what I've seen, it seems like the most violent form of combat. Is that true?
Yes and no. I mean, it so Krav Maga, when it was designed uh, by Emi Lichtenfeld, it was designed to stop a threat, basically,
Right.
in the quickest way possible. Yes, it does have the violent applications to it because the only way you stop violence is with violence,
Right.
and so it's made. There's like no there's no like fixed positions or katas like forms like traditional martial arts has. It's strictly right to the point. You attack the attacker, and that's the violent composition of Krav Maga.
Right.
But it also is um, it's also made for peace.
Right.
And I know it sounds sort of like an oxymoron, but it's it's one of those things where Krav Maga is something where you try to de-escalate as much as you can a
Mhm.
situation. But when that moment of truth happens, and you'll probably hear me say that quite a bit in this podcast, you have to act.
Right.
So if you don't act with violence to mitigate the violent act, you're probably gonna be severely injured or you're gonna die, and that's just the bottom line with Krav Maga.
Hmm.
So
And I know one of the first things that we will teach is this is I don't want any problems.
yes,
That's the very first thing because again, like you said, it's peaceful. Like we want peace first. We try our best to de-escalate. We try our best to avoid the confrontation. Put our hands up. Let them know, hey, I don't want any problems.
exactly,
In putting our hands up and saying we don't want any problems, we're making it known that I don't want this to turn into something. But what they don't know is exactly what we're doing at that moment. And we are preparing for war. I am prepared for peace at the same time that I am prepared for war.
correct,
Right. And I am just as prepared for either one. Right.
correct,
So, okay. So I tell you what, now I'm going to put up some of these pictures and now we can get more into the psychology of Krav Maga.
yes.
So, we're going to start with this picture. Okay. So, in this picture, you said you saw an animal.
Yes.
So, what I want to talk about is situational awareness. I'm going to leave the picture up there for a couple more minutes just so people, oftentimes when people watch the show, they like to look at and examine the picture so that they can kind of figure out what they see here as well. But here you said you saw an animal. I want to talk about animals. I want to talk about mammals in particular. Us as mammals, what separates us from other animals is the fact that we have the ability to our senses when it comes to our senses, and we're much more advanced when it
Yes.
comes to our senses. Now, also with our senses, that is also what we use when it comes to situational awareness.
Yes.
So, but I want to ask you, so specifically, how do we use or rely on our senses when it comes to situational awareness?
So a lot of those senses, really, it's a natural process. So you're using your your eyes, you're using your peripheral vision, you're using your hearing. Okay, you're scanning. Like if you're going to let's say a shopping center, you're going to the grocery store, Walmart, somewhere. Just as an example. Um, you go and you're like right before you get out of the car, you pull into the parking lot, you're scanning. You're looking for that parking place. It's kind of that same process, but as you're looking for that parking place, you're actually looking for other things. You're looking for where people are. Where are they designated in the parking lot? Where are they at in relation to you? Where in relation to where you're gonna go? And you're looking for people that are maybe just hanging out arbitrarily in that parking lot. Maybe they could be squatting down behind a car. They could be going between cars. You know, basically scouting or casing for potential victims.
Hmm.
Um, so it's important. It's important, like too, like when you get out of the vehicle, not only are you looking and you're scanning, you keep your head moving, but you're also listening. You're listening for movement. You're listening for somebody's feet when they're walking. You know, and a
Hmm.
lot of people don't really, especially in this day and age, they're not focused on their surroundings. They're not alert as to what's around them. situational awareness is not even a thought in their process, in their mind.
Right.
So, in this day and age, their phones are here. Their head, actually, I've seen them where they're like this. The phone's up against their chest and their head is way down here, and they're walking and not paying attention. So everything, all of this becomes a blinder. And so they're not focused on what's around them. Just listening for certain noises, like I said, movement is one of the things. You can hear clothes, especially if somebody is moving rapidly. You can hear clothes, rustling. You can hear feet on the ground, which would draw your attention to an area wherever that individual is. They could be trying to advance on you quickly, to take you by surprise. So situational awareness, yes, there's natural processes to that, but it's also, in my belief, it's also a learned process, because if you don't have somebody that's sort of drilling it into your head, you're not gonna think about it as much. And I'm not saying live in a state of paranoia, constantly, and your hypervigilance is always up here. But you gotta have your senses about you and be aware of what's going on around you at all times, especially in today's day and age.
Right. Right. Okay. So also, just sticking with that animal, I want to talk about animal instinct.
Yes.
So instinct and animal instinct, it's basically something that is innate. It's something that you were born with.
Yes.
For instance, a fish doesn't have to think about swimming. It just swims. So these are things that are so natural to you because it is part of you. It is innate. It is something that
Yeah.
you were born with. I believe it is animal instinct for us to defend ourselves. If we are being attacked, animal instinct, it is instinctual for you to just defend yourself, right?
Correct.
But the problem there is if it's just instinct and it's just animal instinct and that part takes over because it requires no thought, now you could possibly get into a situation where you really should be thinking, and instead of thinking, you're acting off of instinct. So with Krav Maga, you have to think. We're very methodical.
Yes.
So how are we able to tame that animal instinct? Or how is it possible for a person, even somebody who doesn't do Krav Maga, how is it possible for a person to tame that animal instinct so that they can think through defending themselves or a situation that arises with this confrontation?
So we like other animals have natural fear,
Hmm.
regardless of what anybody says. We have natural fear. When you're in a process of being attacked, or you're getting surrounded by individuals that are going to possibly hurt you, or attack you or whatever, you
Hmm.
have that sense of fear. And so you have to assess. Assessment is one of the things that humans have to do. Animals, I know animals do it. When let's say they get surrounded, and a dog gets surrounded by a pack of wolves, right?
Hmm.
Well, the dog hunkers down and he's looking at every one of them, and he's assessing,
Hmm.
okay, and he's using his thought process at that point to figure out, okay, which one am I? Basically, what they're doing is they're assessing which one they're going to attack first,
Right.
and that is because if he doesn't attack first, then they're going to end up killing him or
Right.
hurting him or whatever. So as a human, we utilize fear because it's a natural process, but we have to be able to process that fear first and be able to take a deep breath and be able to assess
Hmm.
and be able to utilize strategy
Hmm.
at that point to figure out, okay, how am I going to mitigate this issue?
Right.
So animals are sort of the same way. And lions, I mean, they obviously they attack their prey, but they're also fearful of being attacked themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So especially they're attacking like buffalo, the 2,300-pound buffalo. I mean,
Right.
those are animals that could kill a lion instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the fear that keeps them safe.
Mm-hmm. So it's funny you said that because later on we're going to get into that. I have questions about fear.
Sure.
Um, but okay, so now I want to talk about you being in law enforcement. So, but actually, well, I want to go back to childhood for a second,
Okay.
and still, still dealing with the whole animal thing. So, when you were a kid, was it your natural instincts, your animal instinct, was it instinctual for you to protect people? And if so, is that what led you to becoming a police officer?
So yes, when I was a kid, I always have always saw police officers riding up and down the street, and lights and siren. I mean, they're going to their calls, and I've seen them out on calls and things like that, and actually had experience with police coming to my house. Um, my mom and dad were always getting into it and stuff like that. So for me, I always it became something that I knew from a young age that I wanted to do what they were doing, and
Hmm.
I wanted to protect people and 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 do, and basically try to. I wanted to protect people. I wanted to protect other police officers and things like that, and it kind of just stayed with me from childhood to this point.
Hmm.
And uh, one of the things that really inspired me as well to go career in law enforcement was 9/11.
Okay.
And 9/11 was one of the pinnacle things that that stayed with me because of people, just countless. I mean, it was countless victims.
Right.
And so for me, it's instinct to want to protect somebody. I mean, I've been involved in situations where I've rolled up on things in progress, and it was immediate. Like, if you want to say the animal instinct immediately kicked in, and I went and I mitigated that issue right there and then.
Hmm.
So yes, that was what inspired me and what made me do what I'm doing today.
And you said that you had to deal with cops coming to the house because your parents were getting into it. Did you feel as though you had to protect one or both of your parents as well?
I did. Um, I felt like I kind of needed. Well, I felt in a sense I need not only to protect them, but I needed to police them.
Okay.
In a sense, I like they would get into it when I was younger, and and I would get between them, and they're yelling back and forth at each other, and I had to get got between them, and I'm like, whoa, hold on, hold on, and, let's hold on, pop, mom, hold on, and I had to try to I was protecting each of them individually, but I was protecting the situation as a whole because I could see, even at a young age, I could see that that was going to escalate,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to. There was a fear in me that I was like, if I don't do something, this could get worse, and the police are going to really come here, and then they're going to take them away from me, and that's kind of how I felt when I was a kid.
Right. I got you. Okay. That makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Okay. All right. So we are going to move on to another picture now. Okay. So in this picture, you said you saw a mask.
Yes.
All right. I want to keep that up for a second just so that people are able to kind of figure out what they see as well. Um, with with masks. Okay. So it is, prior to COVID, it was unusual to see a person in a mask. It'd have to be a holiday, um, Mardi Gras, a bank robbery. Like it was, it was uncommon to see a person in a mask, right?
Yeah.
So, but so if you would have seen prior to COVID, if you would have seen somebody just walking around in a mask, we would associate that with atypical behavior. The short definition of atypical behavior is just behavior that is uncommon. So, and again, one of the things in Krav Maga is we look for atypical behavior, things that are not so common. But with COVID now and everyone wearing a mask, it is no longer atypical behavior to just walk around in a mask.
Correct.
So, how are we supposed to how do we look at something that maybe at once was atypical behavior but now it's more commonplace and still spot the atypical behavior in something that is now just normal?
So, well, I guess what you have to look at too is it depends if you're looking at somebody wearing a mask. It all depends on the mask they're wearing,
Hmm.
for one. But there's also, pre-indicators, of, if you want to say, suspicious behavior. So if somebody is walking around in one of the in like a ski mask, let's say it's some, like today it's really hot out. So you see somebody in like a convenience store and they're wearing a ski mask, but it's 97 degrees out and uh, they're acting kind of weird before they go in, and you're watching them and they're looking around and things like that. There's different pre indicators and things like that.
Hmm.
Somebody going into a store with an N95 mask. I mean, that's just, it's obvious. They're just, in my opinion, if they're not showing any of the the precursors to a crime, you know, I mean, it's obvious they're just protecting themselves. They're just,
Right.
or they think they're protecting themselves. Oh, I'm going in the store around a lot of people, so I'm going to put this mask on.
Hmm.
It's, you kind of have to sort of probe a little bit now, especially in my field. You have to probe a little bit and really watch to see if those precursors are there for suspicious activity and behavior.
Hmm.
So more so than ever now. I mean, it's kind of crazy that COVID put us to that point, but it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing about a mask is so with Krav Maga, we are pretty much we're so dangerous that we have the ability to kill with our body, whether it's our hands, our elbows, our knees. Like we have the ability to kill if we go overboard. That's not what we're about. We're not about killing anybody. We are about, first of all, peace. Secondly, de-escalating a situation. Third, necessary violence if we absolutely have to. But one of the things that is really, really important in Krav Maga is assessing the threat.
Correct.
So once, if you've been attacked and you have been able to, I guess, put the attacker on the ground or, stop the attack. At that point, you have to mask. I'm still talking about this mask here. At this point, you have to mask your emotions because at that point, when you've been attacked, for some people, they just go overboard. They just want to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. But the thing is, when someone who is trained the way we are, going overboard could result in somebody dying.
Yes.
So how do we and how do people, period, mask their emotions after the threat has already been taken care of, but you're still angry about the attack?
So the biggest thing is knowing knowing when to turn that switch on and off.
Hmm.
And you have to be able to understand the psychology of the attack. Once you've been attacked, okay, your idea, the idea behind mitigating that attack is removing the mask from that person
Hmm.
so that you can see all of the indicators, you can see everything about what this person's going to do. And you wearing your mask, you wearing your mask as a shield to protect you and to be able to breathe and know that the attack is over. You have mitigated it.
Hmm.
It's all in here. And you have to be able to understand that once that attack is over, it's over. That person is not going to, no matter how many techniques you had to use, no matter if you had to, um, you know, take them to the ground real hard, if you had to do, an elbow strike to the face or the head, and that was the one thing that stopped them, then that's it. That's what you have to realize, and you have to assess. Again, it comes back to assessment. The mask that you wear is, again, what protects you, and you got to understand that mask has to keep those other intentions
Hmm.
from those emotions to come out. Because if you just let those things out continually, that's when you're constantly, like, you're watching an MMA fight, you're watching UFC. You see the person, boom, they get hit, they stiffen up, they go down. As soon as they stiffen up, they're knocked out.
Right.
The eyes roll back in their head, they fall straight back. Boom. What
Hmm.
does the MMA guy do? He jumps right on top of the guy,
Yep.
ground and pound. Boom.
Round and pound.
The
Right.
fight's over. There's
Hmm.
no need to do that. So it's about breathing.
Hmm.
It's about using your senses. Okay, he's not going to attack me no more, and that's what has to be. It's a little hard to explain, but it has to become muscle memory.
Hmm.
It has to be something that's ingrained in you during training.
Right.
A lot of people are naturally, they want to continue to punch that person's head off into the ground, and it's not, it becomes then unnecessary, and you have to really, again, you have to be able to mask those emotions, hold those in, and be able to turn that switch on and off.
Hmm. Right. Okay. All right. So, still keeping with this mask, and I want to talk about childhood again. Go back to childhood.
Sure.
So, when you were a kid, were you shy and introverted? Like, were you the kid that wanted to hide behind the mask, or were you open? And if you were that shy kid, what made you shy?
So yes, I was that shy kid. I was that one that didn't want to take the mask off.
Hmm.
And there were times when I would let my guard down, and I always had my guard up when I was a kid because I was scared of everything.
Hmm.
And I had a rough childhood, so I didn't know who my friends were and who wasn't. But so the mask would come up, and I would try to integrate myself with people and show that I was friendly, and I was, I'm not a bad person, and I want to be your friend. I always wanted to have friends.
Right.
And for me, it was hard because I was bullied as a kid, and there was a lot of times where when I tried to remove that mask, because I didn't. It really, honestly, I was to the point where I didn't want to hide behind it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a point where you want to come out from that barrier. And for me, it was protection, but it at the same time it was something that was annoying. I didn't want to be, that kid. So I try to come out, and next thing I know, I was getting bullied. I was getting talked, punched down on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somebody always had something negative to say. So, I said, okay, it went back on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those were things that, like my grandmother, I was raised, um, by my grandparents, after my parents had split up. So that was the one thing that made me come out from behind the mask.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, I have another podcast called the Quotes and Mirrors podcast where we talk about just quotes, famous quotes, not so famous quotes, some original quotes. And we just kind of break them down. We look at them from an emotional, from a psychological point of view. We not last week, but the week before last, we had a quote which was, adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. How do you feel about that quote? Do you agree with that? And also, in just, if we're looking at the way you were as a child and what you are now, is it possible that as badly as you wanted to be a child, I mean, so I'm sorry, as badly as you may have wanted to be friends with everybody and you wanted complete peace,
Sure.
that adversity revealed itself. I'm sorry, adversity was brought to you, but the real you was revealed. There was only so long that you were able to keep that mask on before you had to start fighting back. So for you, is that quote, does that quote apply to you, or do you believe that it built character and allowed you to get to the point where you are now?
I believe, yes, I believe it did. Adversity did help me to build character, um, because I kind of honestly I didn't really know who I was.
Hmm.
I didn't know where I fit in, and it's really hard, at a young age to really, when you're in a situation like I was, you don't know where you fit in.
Hmm.
You don't know, you don't want to fit in with the bad.
Hmm.
You try to fit in with the good, but sometimes it's easier to go to the bad side. And I didn't do that because I that's just wasn't me, and I knew that wasn't me. So that was part of something that I did know,
Hmm.
and so it made me, adversity did build my character. It made me stronger as a human being. Made me stronger today as a man. Coming up, the experiences I had, but I look back to those things from when I was a child, and I look at today of what it did for me, and it
Yeah.
still does. It still builds character.
Hmm.
And it's also, it has, in the revealing part of it, it did reveal the direction that I wanted to go in. So if you can understand that, it revealed the direction it made me come out from behind that mask, and actually reveal who I was as a human being
Hmm.
and as an individual. And so, I look at those things from way back then and apply them today, and it works. And I look at it and I'm like, no, this is wrong. No, this is right. This is it taught me right from wrong.
Hmm.
So that's kind of, yes, I do believe that it does build character. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so now I want to move on to the next picture here. Okay, so right here, you said you saw a deer. I
Yes.
am really curious as to what other people would say that they see here. I feel like for the most part, that's what you see. You see a deer. No, wow, this is so weird. Okay, now that I'm looking at it again, I see a lot more than just the deer. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about these tests. I've looked at this picture, I don't know how many times. And every single time I've looked at this picture, I've seen a deer. Now I'm seeing something different. Now I'm seeing something different. And it's like after you kind of like try to break down certain parts of the picture, um, I see it looks like a tiny face in the middle, but there are arms coming, maybe some sort of sorcerer or something like that. And arms are coming up and almost as if they're like putting a spell on somebody. It's it's weird, but this isn't about what I see. I just said that just because I because the funny thing, as soon as I pulled it up, I saw the deer immediately, and then maybe a couple seconds later, I saw something completely different. You know, my mind's eye is playing tricks on me, so I just wanted to say that really quickly. But I want to revisit something that we were talking about before. I want to talk about fear. So a deer can run up to 30, I believe, maybe even 40 miles an hour to protect themselves, to escape, to escape. When I was researching deer, it seemed as if they run their fastest when they're afraid,
Yes.
and it is part of them protecting themselves. So oftentimes people look at being scared as something that's negative, but there are some positive things about being afraid. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, because you did, kind of touch on fear, but I want to expound on that a little more. So let's talk more about fear.
Sure.
Let's talk about the upside, the positive things about being afraid of something.
Okay. So fear, well, again, fear is a natural process. Everybody has it.
Hmm.
Uh, anybody that says they're not afraid of something, they're a liar.
Hmm.
Just the bottom line.
Right.
They're they puff their chest out, man. Yeah, I don't, man. I have no fear. I fear no man. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Okay. Um, you have to have fear because if not, you'll die. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
the upside of fear is it helps you to survive. If fear determines fight or flight.
Hmm.
So you might be somewhere and all of a sudden you know 6 or 8 guys approach you, and they start yelling stuff to you, and you're like, uh-oh. Well, that's when fear starts kicking in. The adrenaline dump happens.
Hmm.
you know um, you start to be stressed. Okay. The cortisol dumps into your system, and now you're stressed. Now you're scared. You start to shake
Hmm.
uncontrollably, and now what you're doing is you're looking for a place to flee, and you're thinking, well, okay, if and this is where fight or flight comes in. And if you're cornered, you're probably going to have to fight.
Right.
And that fear, what happens is that fear can actually make you stronger than what you actually are.
Hmm.
So when it comes to a fight, would you be successful with 6 or 8 guys? Probably not.
Right.
The likelihood, the reality of it is, um, can you maybe fight one or two and find an escape route? Yes. So that's the upside is it can protect you. You might just flee. You might flee just from the jump. You say, "Oh, I'm not fighting. I'm not going there. I'm gonna find an escape route. If I gotta, jump through somebody's window, or I gotta do something. Jump over a car, get out of here, or whatever. Jump a fence. I don't care how high it is. I'm gonna get over that fence, but I'm getting away from these guys."
Hmm.
So that's the upside of fear.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I've heard people oftentimes laugh at somebody from running. There was I think some rappers are really stupid. I've heard of a rapper. Actually, and it's not just rappers. It's but this particular situation I'm talking about, it involved rappers. But they it's not just rappers. People are stupid. Human beings are stupid. I don't know what's taking the aliens so long to come and just take a lot of these idiots away. But anyway, um, and I hope they probe them all. But anyway,
Yes.
so
Right.
but the this particular rapper was about to be jumped by a group of guys, and he ran. And there were people that were laughing at him and clowning him for running. Um, isn't that what you're supposed to do when you about to get jumped? Get the hell out of there! Like I don't understand. So
Yeah.
fear saved his life. If he would have stayed there and tried to fight these guys, they could have killed him. But he's here to tell the
Yeah.
story. And yeah, I'm here for you to laugh at me, but the point is I'm here. And that is the positive side to fear. It can save your life. It
That's
makes you
the bottom line.
right.
That's what it's for.
Absolutely. Look, man, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, man. I have been chased home a couple times. Okay, I have been chased home. Let me see, one, two, three times. Three times when I was a kid, I was chased home. Um, Now one of those times, um, I came home to. I was at my father's place, and I got when I got in, he looked at me. It was me and two of my friends, and he looked at me and he said, "What?" He said, "What's wrong?" And I said, I tried to straighten up when I got there because I didn't want my daddy to know that I was scared. That I was running from somebody. So I'm trying to be tough. As soon as we're running, scared to death, right? Fear all over our faces. But
Sure.
as soon as we get inside the apartment, I straighten up. But your parents know. My father looked at me. He said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Daddy, somebody just chased us." And he said, "What did he look like?" I told him. I didn't think my father was about to go out into the neighborhood walking around looking for the guy, but he did. Now, what I didn't know until years later is that first he went and grabbed his gun.
Oh,
He grabbed his gun and he's walking around the neighborhood looking for this guy. Thank God he didn't find him. Who knows what would have happened? Because yes, my father was very overprotective of his child, both of his children, me and my sister. Very, very overprotective. So who knows what would have happened had he found that guy?
sure.
Um, so I'm glad he didn't. But fear at that moment probably saved me and my friends from getting beat up. Um, as a matter of fact, every time that I've been chased home, I can say, "Yeah, I got chased home," but no, I did not get beaten up. You know,
But
it,
it saved you. I mean, because you flee that, look, that was it's part of self defense, believe it or
yeah,
not.
yeah, yep. And you know what's crazy? One of the guys that chased me home that same day, that night, he killed somebody.
Oh,
Yep, he killed somebody that night. So, it was it was one of those things where you just like, man, it really did mess me up because I was 10 years old at the time. I was 10. And it messed me up, but at the same time, I'm glad I survived. I'm here to tell the story. The other person's not, you know, and it's heartbreaking because that person was a friend of mine as well.
oh,
And I heard the gunshot. I heard the screaming because there were other friends out there. I heard the screaming. And then because of course we didn't know everything that was going on. And when my mother opened the door, after the police and the ambulance and everybody was outside, when it was safe, it appeared to open the door.
yeah,
The entire neighborhood is outside, and as well as the cops and the ambulance, whatever. When she opens the door, I look up on the same field where we played football. I see my friend up there laying dead on the ground, and it messes you up and it causes more fear. For years, I lived my life in fear. I was very paranoid. I was told that this guy was not in jail and that he was coming after me. I was 10 years old. In a 10-year-old mind, like I, I didn't know any better. I didn't. So yeah, I heard that he was locked up, which he was. But then I had my best friend who was 2 years older than me. And because he was 2 years older than me, I felt that he knew everything. So,
Yeah.
I have him telling me in his way, trying to protect me, telling me, stay in the house. Because me and this guy just had an issue. And the guy was 17. I'm 10 years old. Why do you have an issue with a 10-year-old?
Right.
You know? So, but he was but my best friend, in trying to protect me, told me just stay in the house. And it eventually sent me into years of seclusion. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I was paranoid. I would think that I saw him at times. And I remember being out pumping gas with my mother, and I would think that I saw him, and I'd jump in the car. And she said, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Babe," I'm like, Ma, he's out there." And she's like, "Baby, he got locked up. He's not out there." And I'm like, Mommy, I think that I saw him. So um there was a fear there that eventually turned into situational awareness.
Yes.
But I probably have just been more aware of things than other people, because mine started off as paranoia.
Yes.
And when you're paranoid, you are like this. You're looking at each and everything. It's situational awareness just heightened,
Yeah.
you know. And but I never lost that part. Even though I'm no longer paranoid, I no longer carry that anxiety with me. I am I never lost that situational awareness. And I never lost healthy fear, because there's a such thing as healthy fear.
Sure.
So but yeah, but look, I didn't even mean to get into all of that. I didn't know I was going to go there with that, but I but look, the show is about Rorschach test, it's psychology. So psychology, man, things are going to start coming out when you start talking about psychology.
Yeah.
So
Hey, it is what it is. It's okay.
right. Okay, so let's go back to your childhood for a second. Okay. I want now, still sticking with the deer. Okay, so but I want to talk about the buck. Okay, you, based off of what I know about you, you are the type to you. Let me see, what's the best way to put this. You will buck the system if the system is wrong.
Yeah.
If you are in any situation where there's false leadership, where people are just doing things the wrong way, um, and actually, sidebar for 1 second. I just want to say something really quickly for everybody that's listening. I know that there's a lot of issues between the community and law enforcement. I know that there's this perception that all cops are bad. That's not the truth. What we have right here is a man, and part of the reason that I respect you so much and that I have the love and admiration that I have for you is you are one of the guys who, where if the other ones aren't doing right, you're not going along with that. You will buck the system because everything that you do is rooted in integrity, and you handle things the right way. You are one of the guys where if I was to get pulled over and I see you coming and I know that it's you, oh, I feel comfortable. I'm okay. Even if you are going to give me a ticket, like I'm okay. I'm okay because I know that this guy does things the right way. And for the most part, that's what it is. With a large part of cops and law enforcement, it's not everybody that's doing things the wrong way. It's not. It's not. And it's unfair for people like you who have that integrity, who do their job the way it's supposed to be done. It's unfair for you to be looked at the same way as some of these other idiots. So I just wanted to say that really quickly. That wasn't even supposed to be even part of the podcast. I just needed, something came over me. I just felt like I needed to just throw that out there.
It's all
Um,
good, man.
but again, you are a person that when things are wrong, you will buck the system. Again, we're talking about that deer now. Now I'm talking about the buck. Okay. So
Absolutely.
you will buck the system. Now, but I would still want to go back to childhood. Were you the type, and even adolescence and maybe even early adulthood, were you the type to just buck the system when you saw things that were wrong? And if so, did people think that you had a problem with authority?
A little bit. They thought more that I was. They thought more that I was. They thought more that I guess being younger, that I didn't want to take ownership of my actions.
Hmm.
It was one of those things where they, back in the day, they would always talk about being responsible and things like that. And I, if I didn't think something was right or whatever, yeah, I would buck the system a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, or they would say I wasn't mature because I was, you know, bucking the system, so to speak, or bucking whatever the issue was at hand. Um, but I guess it boiled for me. It just boiled down to always trying to do the right thing,
Hmm.
and that's what it was for me. And I wanted to be that way because of things that were going on in my childhood. You know, excuse me, family that wasn't doing the right thing, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. So yeah, I would say no, that's not right. I would start standing up basically.
Hmm. Right. Okay. And people, and so the reason I asked that question is because I know there have been instances where I have been um under false leadership. And every time that I'm under false leadership, I buck the system. I go against it. I am the loudest one in there, because I have a real issue with false leadership. And I believe that it's because I feel that God has put me into a position of leadership. And not everybody is called to be a leader,
Correct.
which is okay, because you can't have a leader without followers. So people do have to follow. But when it comes to false leadership, I have a real issue with it.
Yes.
Because I would buck the system when there was false leadership, there was this perception that I had an issue with authority, which I didn't. I didn't, because any other time that there was authority and it wasn't false leadership, there was no problem. There was no problem. But because I know that you and I share that same trait, that same attitude
Yes.
towards false leadership, I did want to ask that question, even though I knew the answer.
Well, not even from childhood, but from a past agency I worked for.
Mhm.
There was this false leadership there, total false leadership, and they thought that I didn't respect authority. They thought that I was just um, being an ass, and
Mhm.
and maybe I was in to some degree, but it's because I knew that whatever they were dictating to me, and again, it was dictatorship.
Mhm.
They the things that they were dictating to me, telling me to do was wrong. And
Mhm.
I just, yeah, I definitely, I stood my ground. I put that wall up and I said, nope. I
Mhm.
just I can't jeopardize 50 years of integrity, things that I've stood for since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Like I said, I already knew the answer to that question, but I
Yep.
still wanted to ask it because I wanted everybody to hear it from you. Um, so okay. So one more thing about the deer. So deer, they are sensitive and they are very attentive to little things,
Yes.
very little things. I want to talk about mass shootings, school shootings, things of that nature.
Yes.
How are we able to look at little things and see signs that this could possibly turn into something much bigger? It could turn into a school shooting or a mass shooting.
So today, you have a lot of platforms, and when I say that, I'm talking about like social media,
Mm-hmm.
and just there's just so many things out there, so many resources out there that we can look at. And if you're looking at Facebook, for example, you're looking, and you see somebody that's angry. A lot of people will express emotions on those things, and sometimes the things that they say are a little off, and it's a little weird, and it kind of those are cues, that hey, something's going on with this person. You might want to kind of keep an eye on them.
Mm-hmm.
Or talking in person with somebody, that that normally doesn't have an issue with anybody or anything, and all of a sudden now they're angry. They're saying things that are very unusual, that are not normal for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about killing, or they're saying, yeah, I bought like 6 guns and 6,000 rounds of ammunition. I mean, and that's a little exaggerated, but um, things that people normally don't do. It's probably, and I'm not saying, again, not to live in a state of paranoia, but to start taking a look, at behaviors and things that people are actually doing and saying and whatnot, things that are unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are things that I believe, in my experience in law enforcement, that just aren't being looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is people aren't, the see something, say something thing. People are not doing that enough. So we're not alert to it. We're not being notified, so that we can't look at it, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't know it until it happens. And
Right.
that's one of the problems.
Okay. Gotcha. So we just need to start paying, I guess, a little more attention to when something is off, when a person's emotions kind of go into the direction of anger, um, even depression, you know, like you said, social media posts, and then just kind of just pay attention. One of the things that you said that I think is huge, and I don't know if people really get a grasp on what you said and the magnitude of this, but you said start looking at behaviors. Start looking at behaviors. So I think that's a great place to start, and I believe that it is a great place that we could possibly end a lot of these school shootings, mass shootings. We just got to start paying attention to behavior.
Yeah,
So,
behaviors are one of the biggest things, and I mean, it could be anything from somebody that's angry
mhm,
to somebody that's you know very depressed.
mhm,
uh, you could have that depression can turn into anger in seconds.
mhm,
And when you have like a multitude, you have a multitude of emotions that occur sometimes, psychologically, that can mess the person up.
mhm,
And if they're, especially if they're feeling some kind of way, they're going through some changes, they're going through a multitude of emotions, those behaviors change.
mhm.
And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for a human being.
Right.
Especially, it's like I compare it to taking, a fish out of a fish tank and putting it in another fish tank with new
Mhm,
water. You know, that water isn't the same as what was in the previous tank the fish was swimming in.
mhm.
That changes the balance of everything for that particular fish.
Right.
So you really have to keep an eye on somebody, their mental status, their mental health, at that point has deteriorated. And you got to try to mitigate that by maybe getting them help, talking to them, getting them to open up
Mm.
and figure out what's going on,
Right.
and why they feel the way they do. Because sometimes they're not going to say, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to go shoot up a school, or I'm going to go in a grocery store and shoot up a bunch of people. They're not going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
It will eventually just turn into that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, you have to try to mitigate that, as much as you can. But the way you do that is by observing and listening to what people are saying, and observing behavior. And that's something I'm telling you, I think that's going to be the key thing. But again, if you're not seeing it from we can't watch everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
if people aren't saying anything, they're not seeing, if they're not saying anything, but they see it, that's an issue. And that's what we have today.
Right. Yep. Okay. All right. So the pictures that I've already put up, these were pictures that you had already seen. So now I have another picture that I want to put up here that you have not seen yet. Okay. Not that one. I did not mean, or that one. I did not mean to do either one of those things just now. Um, all right. So what do you see here?
So it almost looks like an upside down picture of what I saw before. Uh,
It is,
okay.
but I didn't. It kind of changes things when you flip them upside down. So I
So
see things differently.
yes.
Hmm.
So what I can see here again, it almost looks like another animal.
Okay.
Um, it looks like maybe like some kind of dog or a wolf,
Hmm.
and it looks like maybe it's in a process of running.
Okay.
The paws are up, and I guess from its mouth, it's just expelling air because it's running.
Hmm.
That's sort of what I see. I mean, it's kind of different, I guess.
Okay. So you said a wolf. So let's talk about the wolf for a second. Let's talk about the alpha male. The alpha male. Um, I personally, anytime I've ever heard a man tell me that they are an alpha male, I don't believe it. I don't feel as though alphas have to tell people that they are alphas. It's apparent. It's very apparent. Um, in Krav Maga, in combat period, combat period. One of the things that I've come across a lot with boxing, if people find out that I'm a boxer or that I'm a boxing coach, over the past few years, people have wanted to test me. It's like they just, I guess they feel as though they have to be the alpha. They have to show that they are the alpha. So they have said things, but like, well, boxers can't beat street fighters. I remember at our old gym, there were some guys that were saying that, and we allowed them to come into the gym and put the gloves on, and didn't even put them in the ring with one of the killers. Put them in the ring with somebody who had only been in there for probably 5 months, and they beat the hell out of them. I mean, you came in here with your I'm an alpha mentality, and I can do this and I can do that. Um, and and then you got your ass whipped. So, um, but what happens is a lot of times us as men, I want to have this man conversation now. Us as men and our egos and our pride, we like to bloviate and just try to make it seem as if we are something bigger than what we really are for whatever reason.
Sure.
And then a lot of times us who are trained fighters, we notice it. and we may acknowledge it like verbally. I see what you're doing, you know. But when it comes to pride, sometimes you just want to punch them in their face. You just want to just knock their heads off and say, you were not this alpha wolf that you were trying to show us that you are. And sometimes, like you said, it looked like the wolf was running. Sometimes we want to send them running. But so my question to you is, and I'm going to relate this to Krav Maga. We're going back to Krav Maga now. And I feel like we've already touched on this, but still, I just tried to introduce a new scenario here.
Sure.
How do we, as men with pride, but disciplined men under Krav Maga, under boxing, being trained as fighters, and knowing what we are capable of doing to somebody, how do we put that pride to the side so that when somebody comes trying to show us that they are the alpha, that we don't have to show them who they really are, and we're able to just either de-escalate or just walk away from the situation altogether? How do we put our pride to the side so that we can do that?
So what you have to be is you have to be humble, and you have to be somebody that can look at that can see through somebody like that, and be able to say the reason they're acting in this way, the reason they're saying what they're saying is because of two things. They're intimidated and they have fear.
Right.
And they probably fear you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to look at that person, but don't underestimate them.
Right.
Because those that will be that way can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to listen to what they're saying, but don't take any stock in it.
Right.
Just kind of believe that they're trying to prove themselves.
Right. So don't take it personally because it's not about you.
It's not about you. It's not about, they might try to make it about you, but
Right.
the way, and they might do that verbally.
Mm-hmm.
They might try to push the issue with you and get closer to you and keep repeating themselves to try to get you to hear them.
Right.
But as long as they don't touch you, that's all it is word.
Right.
You have to be humble as a human being. You have to be humble as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And just breathe and say, you know what? They're talking.
Right.
And that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that's not trained, especially, will take on that persona.
Mm-hmm.
They'll puff the chest out and they'll, because they want, it's like two animals, one will puff its chest out to show that they are more dominant, that I'm not afraid of you kind of deal.
Right.
In a situation where somebody's like coming off like that, you got to be relaxed. And the more relaxed you are, they're going to pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And more the likelihood of them continuing on with their banter about how they're this and they're that is going to stop.
Right. Okay.
You're not impressed. You
Right.
can't. And I don't even come out. I don't even come out when somebody like that. I don't say, "Hey man, you don't impress me."
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're I've had them get to the point where they try to get up close to me and they're like I'm not scared of you. I'm not afraid of you. And I'm like, yeah, you fucking are.
Right.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, you're scared. And I put my hand on their chest and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, shh. And I'm feeling their heart going boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's off the hook. Like it wants to jump out of their chest.
Right.
So they're intimidated. And that's the whole thing around that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, all right. So for all of you fake alphas, stop. Just stop. All right. All right.
Yeah, no, no good.
Right. No. All right. I got one more picture here for you. Well, the two more pictures, but the one picture is going to be right at the end, right before we end. Tell me what you think about this.
They're,
Detroit
they're,
Nuts.
they're,
Detroit
they're,
Nuts teaching people how to take guns from people.
how do I be nice? Okay, look, so I'm not about. We've talked about this, so I'm not. Look, I'm not going to punch. I'm not about punching down on anybody.
Right. Hmm.
But when you look at that, especially somebody that's been trained, okay, to do that kind of stuff, that's something there that you have to train and train in.
Hmm.
Okay, I've had the application happen on the street. Most of my things have been real world experience
Right.
plus the training. So it's you know you're going and you're putting this stuff up, and you really don't have. And it's obvious. Okay, let's just be realistic here.
Mhm.
It's obvious that what he's teaching is not realistic. It's
Mhm.
not going to work.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, and especially when we go into this training, uh, there's going to be a lot of times when those defenses don't work,
Hmm.
especially when you're static. Okay, and people that don't know what static is, it's non-movement. You're training from one spot. It's okay to train that initially when you start out to kind of slowly show the techniques and how to disarm and whatnot, how to gain control and trap and do different things. But that situation there, he doesn't have. I think what he's trying to do is imitate a lot of things from Krav Maga,
Hmm.
but he puts his own twist into it, and they're not practical. They're not going to work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We talked about some of that stuff. He needs to be careful, and people following him need to be very careful because you can mess around and get killed, especially trying to take a gun from somebody in the way that he is teaching it.
Well, he's teaching the way he's teaching it is he's trying to teach what it looks like he's trying to do is say, hey, this is simplistic. See how
Mhm.
fast I can get the gun? You
Mhm.
know, this is how you do it. And if you watch him and he'll be like, and he takes the gun. I mean, it's that simple and that quick. But
Mhm.
in reality, in a combat situation, because fighting, if you're in an attack situation, that's combat.
Mhm.
It's not going to work that way. They're going to fight you tooth and nail for that gun.
Right.
Okay, they're going to fight you tooth and nail, and
Mhm.
you're going to have to. And we're going to, you and I are going to go over a lot of those applications soon.
Right. Mhm.
And I'm telling you, and you're going to see, you're going to be like, oh, and
Mhm.
the oh shit factor is going to set in, and I want it to because I
Right.
want it to. Something like that, you have to be careful with, especially when you're teaching. But
Mhm.
when you're training something like that, you have to train, and train to to to, to make it work.
Mhm.
And you have to understand there's going to be a lot of situations where it's not going to work.
Right.
And I
Mhm.
don't think he understands that.
Right. Mhm. Yeah, and hopefully nobody that he teaches or even he himself is not in a situation where he tries to do things the wrong way and he or somebody else gets killed. Hopefully, or even just shot, um I put the picture up there to laugh at, the joke about, but it's still a very serious thing because the end result could be tragic. So
Well, I think he has excellent intentions. I think
Mm-hmm.
he does have a martial arts background. I
Right.
looked at his background. He does have
Mm-hmm.
martial arts background.
Mm-hmm.
He has excellent intentions, but the problem is he's not well versed
Mm-hmm.
in that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are well versed. Okay,
Right.
even me, for as long as I've been doing it, I'm versed enough to where I know what I need to do because I've done it. I've
Right.
done it, in the field. But to be in some of the systems that he's been in, and not really, if you look at most of the martial arts systems and whatnot for self defense, a lot of them don't have weapons disarming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Krav Maga does, and that's why a lot of your practitioners will turn to Krav Maga because that is the most practical way to disarm somebody. But
Mhm.
his system is, in my opinion, is no good for that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, man. Well, look, we are about to wrap up now. I think we have covered the psychology. We have talked about childhood. We have talked about fear. We have talked about Detroit dust. And I think we've covered everything. So, but before we get out of here, I want you to just let everybody know where they can get in contact with you if you want them to get in contact with you. But just how they can find you.
So my training center is Brannan Defense Solutions. Okay. And you can get in contact with me on my cell. I'm actually starting the business. It's in the process.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to get my training center up, and everything's a slow process right now. But if you're interested in training and you want to get if you have a group of people that want to train, a security company, law enforcement, business, industry, schools, whatever, and you want to get some, training in and whatnot, in practical self defense, you get in contact with me by my phone is 302-727-9360. The other way to get in contact with there's two other ways. The other way is by my email. It's all together, Brandon Defense Solutions at gmail.com. And also take a look at my business page on Facebook. It'll be under Brandon Defense Solutions. I have a business page and a group. So check it out. You can see on there what we're going to be training people in, and I'm telling you, it's going to be worthwhile.
Right. And for those listening, Brannan is spelled Brannnan.
Yes.
Right. So I didn't want them to think it was Brandon. So yeah, but
Yeah.
Brannan, Brannon.
And
A-N. Hey, what did I say? O-N? I
yeah,
didn't mean to say that. I was thinking about Brandon. I didn't mean to say that. A-N.
it's all good.
No. I said it right the first time.
You did.
Right. Whatever.
Good job.
So okay, so we're about to get out of here, man, but I got one more picture for you before we get out of here. I want you to
Sure.
tell me exactly what it is that you see.
Sure. Oh, this podcast is so dope.
And I couldn't agree more.
It is that.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your integrity. I appreciate the way that you do your job. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that, and just restoring hope for the community, and just being able to be one of the guys that the community feels comfortable to come to and to speak to and to interact with. You do your job as a police officer the way it's supposed to be done, and you represent a lot of other police officers that do their jobs the way it's supposed to be done.
Correct.
um and it just I really feel like we need more people like you so that the community understands that you are not the enemy. You
Correct.
are not
I'm not here to hurt anybody.
right.
I'm more. I'd rather go out and talk. If there's a group of people out there, I don't even if they're thugs or whatever they are. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, all walks of life, and I've dealt with all walks of life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather stand there and chat. I'd rather talk and be cool and talk about everything. And that I'd rather be doing that than arresting them, honestly.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, if it comes down to it, okay, but you know, yeah, I mean, it's about doing the right thing and being honest and having that high standard of integrity. So
Right. Yeah. Yep. And that's something that's really important. You want to connect. You want to connect to the community and the people in the community, regardless of what they're doing or whatever. It doesn't matter. You just want to connect with the people because you do understand that that's the best way to get us all on the same page and to
it
have
is.
us all on one accord. Just connect with the people. So I appreciate that. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of other people when I say that, yeah, that I appreciate it. So, okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and come to an end of the podcast. Again, I thank you for your time. I thank everybody for listening and checking us out. Make sure that you hit Tom up. If you're interested in training, you can also contact me because, like I said in the beginning, this is our business. We're doing this together. Um, yes, I will be a trainer as well, but the trainer, the guy is Tom. So.
That was
All
dumb.
right. So, all right, man. So again, appreciate everything for everybody. So, and for all of y'all, y'all be easy.